Hello, Milwaukee Lutheran Church. Happy whatever day. I don't know. It's a habit for me to try and introduce the day that we're in, but I don't know when you'll be watching this. And we're sending this out on Thursday. So maybe you're watching it today. Maybe you'll let it sit a couple of days, whatever. Anyways, it's good to be seen by you all. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're weathering the Omicron storm just fine. Just a quick intro about what this is about. I jokingly refer to this as the State of the Church address. Of course, making a pun on the State of the Union address. It is nothing so dire. Hopefully, the news in here is better than what we would hear in the State of the Union address. And that's not really a comment on the state of politics or anything like that. I've just never found it to be a particularly cheerful event. But, anyways, what this is intended to be is both a recap of the year in review, but also a quick summary of some of the plans that are in store for 2022. And as I mentioned in the email, the purpose for this is kind of twofold. One is hopefully this will give you some insight as to the budget that the council has put together for approval for this year. And hopefully you'll understand some of the priorities in things that we funded or defunded or whatnot. But also, it's to help get you excited for what's coming up this year and to give you a sense of the direction that I hope that we head, not only in 2022, but over the next 3 to 5 years. Hopefully, this kind of gives you a peek into my brain, amongst other things. So that's what this is about. Just a couple of updates. One is we have extended per the request of the Synod, extended the church closure up through February 11th, that Friday. We will be reopening for the Sandy Nelson service on the 12th, and then we will be having some kind of in-person service on the 13th with the semi-annual meeting. At this point, we just can't really afford to push that back any further, and the metrics by which we have or the conditions by which we had set our plans for reopening will hopefully have been met. And again, that was looking at cases and hospitalizations. The good news is that we have managed to again flatten the curve where the estimated peak of hospitalizations has lowered significantly based on the measures that have been taken both by churches but by businesses and other public institutions. But that peak is now supposed to happen around February 1st instead of, I think it was scheduled for today. So it is what it is. Hopefully, regardless, by the time the 11th rolls around, hopefully that peak will have passed, and either way, we'll be returning to some kind of in-person stuff at that point. We just, we did the whole virtual annual, semi-annual meeting last year, and it was a pain in the butt. And I just don't think that it helped people connect to the business of the church and, connect as a community that well. So worst case scenario, we will meet in our cars in the parking lot, and we will flash our lights as a yay or a nay for motions and business items. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully we'll be able to meet in the building. But of course you'll get more news about that. I already mentioned the Sandy Nelson Memorial is on the 12th at 11 a.m. That is happening regardless. Vaccinations are required for that. So and again, I'm not going to get into that right now. But hopefully you can come and support the Nelson family at that time. Okay. Let's talk the year gone by. I've actually got bullet points here. I've got things that I wrote down to keep myself on track. We'll see how much that helps. So let's talk obvious stuff. First of all, 2021 was tough for many reasons. I think the primary reason that it was tough was that when we started this COVID stuff in March of 2020, projections at that point where this is going to last, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. We'll be back in business by fall. And then, of course, that got extended. And kind of the golden bullet that everybody was looking towards was vaccinations. When the vaccines were made available, we were convinced that was going to fix everything. And that's not what happened. And I'm not going to get into the details of that. We hear enough about that right now. But one of the consequences then was that coming into 2021, there was, for me at least, a palpable sense of disappointment and frustration. We thought that as soon as vaccines arrived, everything would be fixed and we'd be able to return to the way things were. And that didn't happen at all. In fact, what happened was another basically 6 months of closure of the building with a reopening, and then again more waves of COVID that came in, meaning that we've had to close and reopen and close and reopen. And of course, one of the issues is that I went a long stretch without taking any vacation, and now it's really hard to take vacation without going to a virtual service just because of the nature of pulpit supply and the difficulty in bringing somebody in to preach. So what that translated to for 2021 as a whole is it was not an easy year. And both from a professional standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. For me, Len's dad passed away this year, which meant a lot of stuff for us, as well as, kind of some unplanned travels. I already mentioned that my own dad was diagnosed with lymphoma, a B-cell lymphoma, towards the end of this year. That was really scary. The good news is that theoretically and hopefully, and the information that we've gotten is really, really good. And I guess I've just been burned too many times to be 100% optimistic. But he's going to have a few rounds of radiation treatment, and that should basically take care of the visible cancer. Now, of course, with B-cell lymphoma, it's really hard to eradicate it fully, so he will have to be vigilant for years to come. But the current projection is that after these weeks of radiation, he should be good to go. and I hope that you'll continue to pray for him. We've had good things this year as well. We adopted another puppy, as we told you. I've gotten to continue to be an uncle to my niece Emmy and watch her grow and spend time finally in person indoors with my brother and family. Now that we've all been vaccinated and boosted, and testing is a lot more available. Well, depends, right? It hasn't been these past few weeks. But there are a lot of things that have been good this year. So just, on a personal note, I would appreciate your continued prayers. But I also wanted to just express a note of personal appreciation that I am really grateful for you all in being flexible with me. It's, there have been weeks that I haven't gotten much done. It's felt like it's been really tough during COVID. There are good things about working from home. Well, there have been good things about working from home, but on the other hand, sometimes I feel like I'm just staring at a computer screen all day, and I don't get the same kind of tangible feedback from you all. Anyways, I could go on and on about that. That isn't the intent of this chat. But I did want to express those few things. So that is kind of what 2021 felt like. From the standpoint of the church, there are some good things that came out of it as well, too. One of the things that I'm very appreciative of and hopeful for is our live streaming. One of the goals that I had set prior and continue to hold is being able to live stream every worship service and every adult education session going forward. I think the future for our council meetings is completely virtual. We can get almost 100% attendance every time because we don't have to worry about commutes. And since we have so many parents and professionals on our council right now, I don't know that we'd be able to do it otherwise. So that is a great thing. One of the things about the live streaming is that there are some continued hardware upgrades that we need to do. We need a better camera system. Obviously, my cell phone camera isn't anywhere close to the best that we could have. That will require some investment down the road. But that's kind of one of my long-term goals for this year is to get a better camera set up in the sanctuary. So we'll see what happens there. Also, we did amazing things, and by we I mean Stephanie and our outreach team, and I cannot express enough how much I have appreciated working with Stephanie and how much she's had to adjust, coming on in the middle of the pandemic and then kind of expanding this outreach program. And one of the things that we want to do a better job of this year is kind of communicating to you all what is happening with the outreach program. A lot of it is stuff that Stephanie is doing on her own, and obviously we would like to get more congregational involvement in all of these things. But one of the benefits is that this is, both through the stuff that Stephanie has been doing with the clothing closet and with other events, but also through the things that you all, the community, and she's got kind of a handful of people that have been really, really involved, is that Milwaukee Lutheran is becoming known as a church that cares about its community in a very profound way. You are not able to hear the accolades that are sung when we attend ROW community collaboration meetings. We have people that are wanting to participate in the things of the church purely because of the good that we do in the community around us. And that is not just a Stephanie thing. That is due to the generosity of this faith community, the generosity of you all, and also the ability to build on things that have already existed. Even before, we began, even before Stephanie came on and before we kind of rebranded a lot of things as our outreach work, we were already doing wonderful things. We've had the non-food pantry. We've had our emergency relief team. We've had the Janus Youth work. We've done work with House of Zion. Every year we have sponsored refugee families. We supported global ministry. We have done so many, many things. And this is not even mentioning kind of the apples in our eye, our Backpack Buddies program and our quilting program. I just, want to also emphasize the amazing work. And let me be clear. When people ask, what does your church do? And, not just Milwaukee Lutheran, but, in general, for us to say, well, we've got a thriving quilting program, you can maybe anticipate the fact that people might overlook what that means. But the fact that our group of folks is almost solely bringing comfort, peace, and a sense of love to people all across the state of Oregon, nationally and internationally, it's impossible to overstate the amazing things that our quilting team is doing and have been doing throughout the pandemic. Because even when we have been unable to meet in person, they have been, working underground in their own quilting, in their own sewing rooms. And we get letters and emails almost weekly that are words of thanks for the source of comfort that these quilts have been. And again, as always, it's not just quilts. It's prayer shawls. It's dog beds. It's hats. It's mittens. It's all these things that are helping the people of our community. So when I talk about what the outreach is of MLC, and it includes all of these things, and it's building in all of these things. And I look forward to what this will become in years to come. And I'll talk about that in what's coming next. I'm still in the year in review, believe it or not. Finally, janitorial stuff. So Dave Seward, who was our janitor for as long as I've been here at least, retired in the fall of this year. He had been ready to retire for a while, but it kind of stuck around just to help us through. And what we have transitioned into after looking at bids from some different janitorial services. And one of the issues is that we were getting, and I've mentioned this before, we were getting a pretty sweet deal with Dave and his cleaning company. Janitorial services bill per square foot. They do not bill per work done. And so we have this gigantic building that does not need to be cleaned on a daily basis. And so many of the quotes that we were getting back would have, not just doubled or tripled our janitorial costs, would have quintupled our janitorial costs. And thankfully, gratefully, we have somebody who is willing to step into that role. So Stephanie has agreed to step into the role of providing our janitorial services. and she will be doing all the things that Dave was doing, um, and maybe a couple more as well too. And the details of that is essentially we're covering the cost of her rent. Just wanted to express my appreciation for Stephanie willing to take on that role, but also her willing to take on, of course, the critique that often comes along with it. But you will see that reflected in the budget for this year. It kind of amounts to a pass through. One of the things that we realize is that we would need to give that money to Stephanie as income. We can't really do an exchange of services. It's a long story, but so that is taxable money. But we'll talk about that stuff in the budget and the semi-annual meeting in a couple of weeks. Let me think. Is there anything else year in review? I just wanted, one thing is I wanted to highlight the fact that you all have been really good with COVID stuff. And of course, I can't spy into your personal activities, but the fact that we managed to meet for mostly all of the fall, with a few exceptions, and not have any, COVID exposure, not have to close our building due to contact tracing or anything like that, is a testament to our caution and our diligence. And a lot of that is that, as far as I know, we're pretty much all vaccinated. And as soon as the boosters were made available, I know that you all went out and got those as you were eligible. So thank you for doing that work. And I just wanted to highlight that, and this is one of the philosophies I've been operating with over these past couple of years, and this is why we have closed due to Omicron, is that it's not about us. It is about us. I don't want any of our community to get sick. But it's about the health infrastructure that we are a part of, and a lot of it is about our general perspective on what it means to be a member of a community. We do great work in the community, and I would like to think that part of our great work is caring for our healthcare workers and our educators, which are the two groups, as we're watching right now, that are heavily impacted by spikes in COVID cases. Healthcare workers, obviously, packed hospitals equate to stressed, overworked, and demoralized healthcare workers, and we're watching that. We're watching nurses and doctors get burned out at an incredibly quick rate, as well as it means that these very necessary medical procedures that need to be done, which our community, being in the demographic that it is, these are resources that we need greatly. It means that a lot of the time they aren't available, right? Because hospitals are packed. We can't get our knee replacements or hip surgeries or heart, EKG analyses or anything like that, or our cancer treatments, because doctors, hospitals, and surgeons and nurses are just booked. So the caution that we have taken and the care that we have taken in protecting ourselves and our families, then it extends to caring for our healthcare workers, but it ultimately comes back to us. So I wanted to say a word of thanks for that. With regards to educators, we have a lot of teachers right now, both retired and working, that are a part of our community, and you can simply talk to any one of them to understand how tough COVID has made their jobs. Even prior to this Omicron wave, you're dealing with teachers who have kids that really have not socialized because they haven't been in a classroom, and all of a sudden they're back in a classroom. One of the things that Rao expressed to us was how tough it was because, when they started up against this year with in-person school, you had 7th and 8th graders who had never been in a junior high setting before, right? Who had never been in person. And so you've got this really crucial time for mental, emotional, and social development, as well as physical development for kids. And they missed out on a lot of that, and have a lot of catching up to do. And so that has been tough. And it's been tough for elementary school and high school as well, too. But then that has been compounded by this year the impact that it's been physically taking on teachers. with breakthrough cases because of Omicron, but also just the continued exposure of teachers to tons and tons of people on a daily basis. I mean, I know that my brother and my sister-in-law get sick 10 times as much as Elena and I do, even in a normal year, simply because of how much my niece is exposed to colds and flus and stomach bugs and all those things. Imagine being a teacher and having to be exposed to this. Now, compound that normal, attrition of colds and flus and stomach bugs, compound that with COVID, and essentially what you've got is you've got an overtaxed teaching system, an overtaxed teaching staff, just a total lack of any form of, substitute teacher base. And you can imagine just how much chaos that creates and how much stress that creates for our education system. So I also want to say a word of thanks for your diligence and your patience, and your compassion in terms of how we support these two groups of people. So that's it for a year in review. And I just want to make a note here. If you have any questions about stuff that's happened over this past year, don't hesitate to reach out to me, 503-427-8332. I would be happy to talk to you at any point in time. And I would also say as well is that with me being in and out of the office so much during, Omicron, but also, in weeks to come, to be honest with you, my work schedule, for at least for the next year, is probably going to continue to be very hybrid, in that I will have days in the office, which I hope to publish come Lent. But I will have a lot of time where I'm working from home as well, too, simply because if I'm during sermon prep or adult education prep, or if I'm, doing this kind of work or editing videos or anything like that, it's actually easier for me to do it at home, where you all aren't bugging the heck out of me. I'm joking. I'm kidding. But also where I can watch our dogs and alleviate my wife, who is also working from home, who is extremely busy right now for different circumstances. But also, I don't have to do 40 minutes of commute, so I actually get more work done in less amount of time, believe it or not. What was I saying? Oh, I was just talking about, I don't know. I forgot what I was talking about. Anyways, yeah. So, just saying, as I'm continue to be, hybrid myself and not always sitting in the office, it's more and more important that if you want to talk to me, you need to let me know. I can't read minds. And we continue to have a congregation of around, we've got over 190 subscribers on our email list, which represent families, right? So conservatively, we've got around 250 people that comprise this congregation, and I can't know what's going on with each and every one of you. That doesn't mean I don't want to, and that I've stopped caring about you. But for my sake, if you want to chat with me, I would love to chat with you. But you may need to initiate that communication. Give me a call, 503-427-8332. Shoot me an email. You can even drop a note through Stephanie, and that will get back to me, believe it or not. Okay, let's talk about what's coming next, because my goal was to keep this video at least under 40 minutes and hopefully under 30 minutes. I already mentioned that one of the priorities going forward is to continue supporting virtual and streaming worship and adult education. Hopefully, over the course of this year, I'll be able to reconnect with some pulpit supply so that when I do take vacation, it doesn't interrupt our in-person worship schedule. But I think it is very important that our services be broadcast online, and that our adult education courses be broadcast online as well too, for two reasons. One is that when you can't make it to church, I think, based on feedback from y'all, you enjoy being able to watch and stay connected with the worship and what's going on in the community. One family in particular has had to be away for weeks on end to support their children, and have tuned in pretty much every week for the worship services, and they would not have been able to do that otherwise. And they have been able to do that through family COVID exposure, through all kinds of stuff. So that's just one example of how this format supports our community. I know that many of you have appreciated being able to stay up to date on the adult education series that we've been doing. So when you've not been at church, you've still been able to go back and catch what you missed. And I imagine, I may be projecting here, you might appreciate being able to fast forward too. Because one of the things that I notice is when I go back and review the live streaming, the general average viewing time is about 30 minutes. So I'm guessing that you're specifically tuning in for the sermon and maybe some of the music, and you're leaving some of the other stuff behind. I don't know. But I anticipate that when you're watching pre-recorded stuff, you might, go to the pieces that you enjoy and skip the rest. Which, hey man, it's 2022. I'm cool with that. If you're skipping the sermon, whatever. If you're just watching it for the music, if you're getting something valuable out of it, hey, I'm not one to complain. So that's one benefit. The other benefit of continuing to offer streaming stuff is that it actually builds our audience. And I don't want us to delude ourselves into equating people watching our stuff online with in-person attendance. It's not the same thing. And I don't mean that as in a derogatory fashion towards those who are watching virtually. I mean, what I mean to say is that, some folks delude themselves into thinking that because they've got 30 people watching a streaming service, that means that they have increased their worship capacity by 30. No, it's not the way that it works. Is that a good thing? Yeah, it's absolutely a good thing. But in terms of the things that sustain our community, which are giving and participation in the community, it's not the same thing. And again, this is not intended to be derogatory at all towards folks who are watching virtually. I just want to be realistic about what these numbers mean when we do it. However, any numbers are good numbers, right? I think that goes without saying. And additionally, if it helps people get meaning and get a worship experience and get to know more about our community, even if it's a gateway to eventually participating in the life of our congregation, I think that's great. And I think that being able to do this, as a result of COVID is maybe one silver lining that came out of it all. Okay, so we're going to continue to do that. And as I mentioned before, I would like to improve our cameras. Our sound is on its way there. I've still got some tweaks that have really nothing to do with the streaming stuff. It has to do with the hardware that we have, but that's down the road as well. Okay, let's talk like concrete stuff. I fully intend to return to 2 services starting in Lent. And here is my justification for that. Right now, our numbers don't justify it, to be honest. When we were in person leading up to Christmas, we averaged around 60 people, which we were averaging closer to 80 at our 8:30 service pre-COVID. So we're obviously significantly down for in-person worship from what we were. If we split to 2 services, there's a chance, and it's reality, that it may feel empty in there. Here is my justification for it. One is that when you hired me on, this was one of the goals that you set before me, was you wanted 2 unique worship services. And I continue to work on that. But you wanted a service that was traditional, singing the liturgy, singing traditional hymns from the ELW, and you wanted a service that at that time we referred to as contemporary, what I think is maybe better described as being a different liturgy. Something that is less straight out of the ELW, holds many of the same things in value, but is lower. Here's a better way to put it: lower threshold for being able to participate. Because let's be honest, walking in and trying to figure your way through the ELW liturgy, whichever setting we're using, is a pretty tough, bar to jump over, and might be off-putting to some folks. Having a lower impact, lower, participation threshold service, I think, is a great thing. So that's one reason that I want to go back to 2 services. I don't want to lose that, and I also don't want to lose the talent that we have. We are, the budget proposes that we continue to fund 2 accompanists through 2022. I want to keep Mike, and I want to keep Kit, and also John in our choir, because it's rare that we get this many good musicians. I know this for a fact. I don't want to lose any of our wonderful musicians. I want to keep all the talent for myself. I don't want to give it to somebody else. So call that selfish or whatever. But I think that's one reason. The third reason is that it's kind of a one-way street. If we commit to going to one service, I don't know that we're ever going to go back to two. And perhaps we have become a church that is a one service per Sunday church. That might be a reality. I want to give it one last go at two services. If we can fund our accompanists through 2022, we can give it another year and see what happens. One of the things that I'm thinking about is, again, fidgeting with that second service. Potentially changing service times. This might be a surprise to Kit. I haven't talked about this with him yet. But even changing again the format of what's happening there. But that's something I really haven't fleshed out yet. But I want to have that option. So that's two services. And that, frankly, is kind of the future of worship, at least for 2022. Related to that, while I'm on the topic, because I'm watching my time as well, is come Lent, we are going to restart our Wednesday stuff, which includes a Wednesday morning Bible study, which again started as our widows and widowers group, but it's now just a Wednesday morning Bible study, including a Wednesday morning prayer service and including Wednesday evening Lenten services. Or Wednesday sometime Lenten services. One of the things that I've been toying with is potentially doing it as a midday service. I don't know how all y'all are going to feel about that. The one piece is I don't know if we're going to do soup this year. I'd hate to give up the soup, but it just feels not quite right yet with COVID the way that it is. We'll see. I don't know. You will get concrete information about that before Lent, I promise, but hopefully by the time of the semi-annual meeting. I've got to figure some things out with regards to that. But so the Wednesday morning prayer service, the Wednesday morning Bible study, and the Wednesday and a Lenten service, I intend to return to our regular rotation, and the prayer service and the Bible study will continue post Easter. Okay, I mentioned that. Another related thing. One of my goals for this year, and I'm not sure it's going to happen as soon as Lent. It might happen as soon as Easter's over with and I get a chance to kind of like screw my head on again, is I want to start a Bible study at the Springs and or Rose Villa, and move some of our senior ministry over to those sites. And what that may turn into is it might turn into our Wednesday morning Bible study and prayer service moves to one of those sites, probably at this point, the Springs. Now, I have to talk with the folks at the Springs yet to see if this is a possibility, but that's the direction that I'm heading. The reason that I say the Springs and potentially not Rose Villa is because we've got more folk at the Springs right now. That is not out of a desire to exclude the folks at Rose Villa. And if it ends up that I need to duplicate it and maybe do things alternating locations, totally do that. Thought behind this is that we have more and more of our population who are at one of those two retirement facilities, as well as at Willamette View. Not forgetting the Willamette View folks. But if we can create a scenario wherein less of our folks have to travel, and wherein we can provide some ministry resources for folks that can't leave the facilities either, I can't help but think that that's a good thing. And this is something I've been thinking about for a while. And again, as soon as I feel more comfortable about me not being an infection vector for our retirement homes, that's probably when we'll kick it off. So at least not during Omicron. And just with the amount of time invested, it probably wouldn't start until after Lent, after Easter. But that is going to happen this year. Also, part of that is I intend to work with Linda Smith. She will be working with me on this, but also Josh Kingsley at King of Kings. He and I have talked about potentially teaming up on something like this. So that's that. Final thing, outreach to come, and just kind of like general where I hope to go. One of my goals, and this is like a 3-year or a 5-year goal, is I want our outreach ministry to be a self-sustaining thing. And this includes Stephanie's outreach salary, but it also includes all the resources that we have and that we provide. And I think there's a lot of room to expand what we're doing. And at some point, you'll hear from Stephanie as to all the plans that she has schemed up. But I mean, in terms of the outreach ministry beginning to fund itself and eventually potentially provide a revenue stream for the church, because part of this 3 to 5 year goal is figuring out a life of sustainability for the church going forward. And this isn't me forecasting about MLC, but here's what we're watching go on with a lot of our congregations, is that there are less and less and less congregations that are able to fund full-time pastors. This doesn't mean that they're necessarily dying or dead congregations. This might be the new equilibrium. There may come a time, and I don't really have any plans for it right now, just making sure that's clear, where I need to go part-time to continue to do this work here. And I don't know if that'll be a thing for me or not. I don't know if that would make financial sense for our family, but my priority, my goal is for MLC to arrive at a place of equilibrium where we can do the ministry that is important to us. We can continue to be a resource to our community, and we can do so without having the year-to-year anxiety of how are we going to make ends meet. And I think it's going to involve a lot of creative thinking on where revenue streams come from for the congregation. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I heavily suspect that our outreach program is going to be part and parcel of that. I have seen with my own eyes the tangible effects of the work that has been done in our community, and how that has created positive vibes. Hopefully at some point that translates into giving and donations to the church, and or folks wanting to join in the work that we're doing. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But regardless, I think that's fertile ground. Okay. 37 minutes. Well, I kept it under 40. Just wanted to close by saying again, thank you to all of y'all. And my prayer for this year is that, less COVID. That goes without saying. But also that we get to do and see some wonderful things, and the wonderful things that God is doing in the world around us. Amen. Amen.